Billionaire's paralyzed daughter met a poor black boy. The miracle has appeared. The rain hammered against the pavement as a little girl screamed from her wheelchair, her voice piercing the night. "I should have died, not Mom." Those words cut through her father's chest like a knife. In the shadows of a grand city hospital, a man of wealth stood powerless, while his daughter's spirit crumbled before his eyes. And just a few steps away, a ragged boy with duct-taped boots carried a secret that could change everything. What would you have done in his place? Welcome to Emotional Echoes, a channel where emotions come alive and every story leaves a lasting echo in your heart. Please subscribe to Emotional Echoes channel. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more souls can feel these stories. Now, let me tell you what happened. Stay with my video till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far this story spreads. Michael Reeves was a man who once had everything, a successful businessman with a home that looked perfect from the outside. But now, he carried a silence so heavy it followed him everywhere. His wife was gone in an accident, and his little girl, Emily, just 7 years old, was left in a wheelchair. She used to run across soccer fields and climb trees with her friends. Now her eyes looked far older than her age, clouded by grief she didn't know how to carry. The day after the funeral, Michael pushed Emily's chair down the front steps. Her small hands clenched tight to the armrests, her face twisted in pain that had nothing to do with her legs. She screamed into the cold air, her voice breaking. "It should have been me, not Mum." Michael froze, unable to answer, because in his own heart he sometimes felt the same. At the hospital, doctors gave the same words again and again. Long recovery. No guarantees, everything depends on her will to fight. But Emily refused every session, turning her face to the wall, lips sealed, eyes empty. Nurses tried gentle encouragement, therapists tried patience, but she shut down more with each passing day. School wasn't kinder. On the playground, whispers turned to sharp words. "She's broken. Don't play with her. She can't even stand." Laughter stung louder than any injury. Emily wheeled herself to a corner, hiding her tears. She stopped raising her hand in class, stopped looking people in the eye. Her world shrank to silence. Michael watched helplessly from the sidelines. He buried himself in work during the day, only to return home to the heavy quiet of his daughter's despair. One evening, after another failed appointment, the doctor placed a hand on his shoulder and spoke softly. "Without her will to fight, no therapy will work." Michael nodded, but inside he shattered, because he didn't know how to give his daughter back the will to live. One grey afternoon, Michael wheeled Emily out of the hospital after another silent appointment. She kept her head down, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Outside, a group of kids from school passed by and whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "She's broken. Don't invite her. She can't even stand." The words cut deep, and Emily's face crumpled. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. Not far from the entrance, a boy about her age sat cross-legged on a flattened box. His jacket hung loose, and his boots were patched with strips of duct tape. A small notebook rested on his knees, the pencil in his hand moving quickly. He didn't look up when people rushed past, but when he heard Emily cry, he tore a page from the notebook and held it out. On the paper was a sunflower, bright and steady, sketched with surprising care. He whispered softly, "My mom said sunflowers always turn to the light, even on the darkest days." Emily blinked, startled, and for the first time in months, her lips curved into a small smile. It was fragile, but real. Michael noticed and rushed forward, his voice sharp. "Stay away from my daughter." The boy lowered his eyes but didn't flinch. Emily grabbed the drawing with trembling hands and looked up at her father. Her voice rose, shaky but fierce. "He's the only one who talks to me like I'm not broken." The air froze between them. Michael's jaw tightened, and he pushed her chair away. But in that instant, he realized something had shifted. That night, Michael's anger still burned. He told Emily firmly that she was not allowed to see that boy again. He called him dangerous, a distraction, someone who didn't belong in their world. Emily said nothing, but her small hands curled around the sunflower, drawing as if it was the last piece of hope she had left. Michael didn't notice. He was too busy building walls around his daughter, thinking he was protecting her, not realizing he was shutting her away from the one person who made her feel alive. The next afternoon, Emily waited until Michael left for work. She wheeled herself slowly out the back gate, her heart pounding with both fear and excitement. She knew where to go. The park was quiet, the swings creaking in the breeze, and on the bench under the old oak tree sat Zeke. His notebook rested on his lap, his pencil smudging the edges of another sketch. When he saw her, his eyes widened, but he didn't move, as if afraid she might disappear if he spoke too soon. Emily rolled closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not supposed to be here." Zeke tilted his head. "Me neither," he said softly. They both smiled at the secret they now shared. For a long time they just sat in silence, the afternoon light filtering through the branches above them. Then Zeke closed his notebook and leaned forward. "My mum used to help soldiers when they came back hurt. She showed me how the body can remember, even when it forgets. She said sometimes you have to teach it to be brave again." Emily's hands tightened on her chair. Her voice cracked. "I can't do it. I don't want to try. Every time I try, I see the accident again." Her chest heaved as the words spilled out, the confession she had never given anyone else. Zeke's eyes softened. "Then don't try to walk. Try to smile first. That's where healing starts." His words hung in the air like a promise. For the first time, Emily let herself breathe. She looked at him, this boy with torn shoes and tired eyes, and felt something shift inside her. She wasn't just the broken girl everyone avoided. She was a child who could laugh again, even if just for a moment. They began talking about little things, about the drawings in his notebook, about her favorite songs, about how she missed her mum. Zeke listened, like every word mattered. Emily felt her heart crack open just a little, enough for light to seep back in. The late afternoon light slanted across the park as Zeke placed the warm rice bag on Emily's lap. He encouraged her gently to try moving her toes, his voice steady and soft, as if patience itself had taken shape in him. Emily focused, her face tightening, but nothing happened. The silence broke when she burst into tears. "I'm useless. Everyone hates me." The words spilled out like a wound she had hidden too long. Zeke moved closer, his voice calm but firm. "You're not useless. You're alive, and that means you still matter." The words landed heavy, not like comfort, but like truth. Emily froze, stunned, her sobs easing as she looked at him. For the first time, someone told her she was more than her broken body, more than the whispers at school. A faint laugh slipped out through her tears, shaky and small, but real. Just a few steps away, hidden behind a tree, Michael had been watching. At first, he wanted to pull her away, to shout that this was foolish. But when he saw her laugh, his chest tightened in a way he hadn't felt in months. It had been so long since he'd seen joy on her face. That fragile smile pierced him deeper than any cry, because it reminded him of all the times he couldn't protect her from pain. His throat burned. As he realized the truth, he had been powerless to give his daughter back the one thing she needed most: hope. Michael's patience finally snapped one evening as he pulled Zeke aside. His voice was sharp, almost trembling with fear more than anger. "Why her? Why give her hope you can't guarantee? Do you know what it will do to her if you fail?" Zeke stood small against his fury, clutching the worn notebook to his chest. "Because no one else will," he answered simply. The words hung in the air, quiet but unshakable, and Michael found himself with nothing to say back. But the world outside was crueler than any father's warning. At school, Emily tried to move through the hallway unnoticed. She kept her head down, hands tight on the wheels of her chair. A group of classmates spotted her and smirked. Their whispers grew louder. "Broken doll. Can't even stand." Before she could escape, one boy shoved hard against her chair. The wheels spun sideways, and she toppled to the floor. Her palms slammed against the cold tile, stinging with pain. Books scattered, pages sliding across the hallway. Laughter exploded around her, cruel and merciless. "Crawl, loser." The words cut deeper than the fall. She felt every eye on her, not with pity, but with mockery. Heat rushed to her face, her chest tightened, and for a moment she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. She lay there frozen, ashamed, too heavy with humiliation to move. By the time Michael heard about it, Emily had locked herself in her room, refusing to eat or speak. Her father stood outside the door, his hand pressed to the wood, listening to her muffled sobs. He wanted to storm inside, to promise her that she would be okay. But the truth clawed at him. He couldn't promise that, not when she had just been broken in front of everyone. That evening, Zeke appeared near the gate, quiet as always. He didn't ask questions, didn't force her to talk. He knelt beside her chair when she finally came out, her face pale, her eyes hollow. His hand slipped gently over hers, warm against her trembling fingers. "Don't let them decide who you are," he whispered. His tone carried no pity, only certainty. Emily lifted her gaze, searching. She saw a boy with patched boots and no home, who still stood stronger than the kids who pushed her down. Tears blurred her vision, but this time they didn't come from shame. A flicker of light stirred again, fragile but alive. She squeezed his hand, holding on as if it were the only solid thing left. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She wasn't done yet. The Sunday sun hung low as Emily rolled onto the patch of grass where Zeke had set his things. A small cloth bag filled with warm rice lay across a towel beside a tennis ball and a jar of cocoa butter. Zeke explained each one with patience, his voice calm. The rice for heat, to loosen muscles. The ball for pressure points. He placed the warm bag gently over Emily's thighs, waiting for her nod before moving on. She blinked as warmth spread slowly, a feeling she thought she had lost forever. Zeke knelt at her feet and began small movements, careful not to push too hard. He asked her to describe what she felt, even if it was nothing. At first she shook her head, ready to give up again. But then, a flicker. She gasped and whispered that she could feel weight pressing down, the faintest trace of pressure. Zeke's smile was quiet but proud. Emily's eyes widened, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from pain this time, but from surprise. Michael had been standing nearby, with his arms crossed, watching with growing tension. Finally he snapped, his voice echoing across the park. "She needs doctors, not fairy tales." His words cut sharp, filled with frustration and fear. Emily turned her head toward him, her chin lifting. "Then why do I only feel alive when I'm with him?" she answered. The silence that followed was heavier than the anger. Michael froze, stunned by her defiance. For the first time, Emily's belief sounded stronger than his doubt. Zeke stayed quiet, giving her space to own that moment. She sat straighter in her chair, her small hands gripping the armrests, her eyes locked on her father's. It was not just about walking anymore, it was about choosing life again. And Michael, for all his wealth and power, realized he was no longer the only one guiding her path. The afternoon sky was heavy, clouds pressing low, as if mirroring the weight inside Emily's chest. She had pushed herself through every stretch, every tiny motion, but that day her body refused. Her arms shook as she tried to lift herself, her legs gave out, and she crashed onto the grass with a sharp cry. The ground felt unforgiving, and the air caught in her throat. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a sob broke through. "I hate these legs. I wish I died with Mom." The words tore out of her like something poisonous, spilling into the open air. Michael froze, his body trembling as the sentence hit him. His breath stopped, and the tears came fast, blinding and raw. He collapsed to his knees, his hands covering his face, because hearing his daughter wish for death shattered what little strength he had left. Emily curled in on herself, her small frame shaking. The park was quiet except for her sobs, the kind of sound that broke anyone who heard it. Zeke didn't move right away. He sat down slowly beside her, his knees sinking into the dirt, giving her the silence she needed to cry. His hand hovered for a moment, then rested gently over hers. He didn't speak yet, because some pain couldn't be answered with quick words. Minutes passed, heavy and slow. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the weight of her grief, carrying Michael's muffled cries. Finally, Zeke's voice came, soft but steady. "Don't give up." He paused, letting the words breathe, then added, "Your mum wouldn't want her light to end with her." Another pause, longer this time, his voice catching for a second before he pushed through. "She passed it to you." Emily's sobs quieted, her chest still heaving as she turned her face toward him. His eyes were damp, his jaw trembling, but his gaze was steady. He wasn't just comforting her. He was fighting with her, carrying part of the pain. She swallowed hard, tears streaking her cheeks, and whispered that she would try again. Not because it was easy, but because she wanted her mother's light to keep burning. Zeke nodded, and in the stillness of the park, the shift was almost invisible, but it was real. The moment, despair bent into determination. The air in the park felt still, as if the world was holding its breath. Zeke guided Emily through the familiar stretches, his voice calm and steady, telling her to focus on small things. "Just try to move your toes." Emily closed her eyes, lips pressed tight, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Then, almost too faint to notice, one toe twitched. She gasped, staring down in disbelief. Her foot shifted, the heel pressing into the ground, and slowly, it lifted. Michael fell to his knees beside her, hands trembling as tears streamed down his face. "You're still my miracle, no matter what," he whispered, his voice breaking. His suit pants brushed the dirt, but he didn't care. He pulled his daughter into his arms, holding her like the most fragile and precious thing in the world. Emily buried her face against him, her shoulders shaking, but this time it was not from despair. Her voice was soft, but it carried more power than any cry. "I don't feel broken anymore." She clung to him, her small frame trembling, and Michael held her tighter, as if to anchor her to this new beginning. Zeke stepped back, his smile small and quiet, content to let the moment belong to them. The park seemed brighter somehow, not because of the sun, but because of a hope that had finally found its way back into Emily's heart. The news about Emily's tiny miracle spread like ripples in water. At first, it was just whispers from a nurse and a neighbor, but by the next Sunday, 2 other families showed up at the park. One had a boy with braces on both legs. The other, a girl recovering from a stroke who had stopped speaking much. They looked at Zeke with guarded hope, like people afraid of being disappointed again. Zeke laid out his towel on the grass, the same way he always did, but now the space around it felt different. Parents knelt beside their children, watching his every move. He showed them how to warm rice packs and place them gently on tired muscles. He let them see how patience mattered more than force. And while he worked, he spoke softly, reminding them that healing was not measured in miles, but in inches. Emily sat close, her chair tilted forward as she watched. She wheeled herself near the girl who sat silent, her hands tight on her lap. Emily leaned in and whispered, "If I can try, so can you." The girl's eyes lifted, uncertain, but for the first time she uncurled her fingers and reached for the towel Zeke had placed. She tried a tiny stretch, and though nothing moved at first, her lips parted as if she was surprised by her own attempt. Emily smiled, and the girl's mother began to cry quietly, pressing her hand to her mouth. By the 3rd Sunday, the park no longer felt empty. Children laughed when they felt a spark of sensation. Parents clapped softly at every twitch, every toe wiggle. One boy who had arrived with braces managed to push his heel into the ground, slow but steady. His father fell to his knees in disbelief, holding his son's face with trembling hands. That moment was small, but it proved something was possible. The families who had once lived in silence now leaned toward each other, sharing stories and encouragement like old friends. Michael stood a little apart, watching it all. He saw Emily not as the girl who had shut herself in her room, but as someone who leaned forward to give another child courage. His chest ached with pride, mixed with regret that he hadn't been able to give her what Zeke did. He glanced at the boy with duct-taped boots and a steady voice, realizing the park had become more than a place of practice. It had become a sanctuary where brokenness was no longer shame, but the beginning of strength. One evening, after the park had emptied and the sun was low, Michael turned to Zeke with a quiet firmness. "Come home with us. You don't have to wander anymore." Zeke hesitated, his small hands clutching the strap of his worn backpack. But when he saw Emily's hopeful smile, he nodded. That night, for the first time in years, he slept in a real bed, under a roof that felt safe. He didn't say much, but the silence carried something new. It carried belonging. Weeks passed, and Emily's strength grew. She still used her wheelchair, but her spirit had changed. She wheeled herself back into school with her head high, no longer hiding from the whispers. When a group of classmates sneered again, one of them muttering that she would always be broken, Emily smiled with steady eyes. "I may be in this chair, but I'm stronger than you'll ever be." The words hung in the air, sharp and unshakable. This time she rolled forward without tears. And so the story closed. Not with a cure, but with a healing far deeper. Life can steal our legs, our loved ones, even our innocence. But if we still hold on to hope and love, we can rise again. Sometimes, the ones who look most shattered are the very people who learn how to lift others. From a broken cry in a wheelchair to the quiet strength that lit up a whole community, Emily's journey showed us how despair can turn into hope when kindness steps in. Zeke, a boy with nothing, gave her back the will to live, and in doing so, found a family of his own. This story is not just about them, it is about all of us, and the power of love and compassion to heal what seems beyond repair. If this story touched you, share your feelings in the comments, like and subscribe to Emotional Echoes, so more hearts can hear these echoes of hope. Thanks for listening.